Hello guys and welcome to the latest episode of United Daily. It's Ben here. It's Friday. Happy Friday everybody. Make sure you get in the live chat. If you're watching now on any other platform, please come and join us over on our YouTube channel. It's easy to find us, youtube.com/all for United. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with United Daily on your favourite podcast platforms, please just search All for United, United Daily and show us that support. Right, slightly different show today. I want to do some more of these. They're sort of player profile shows. In the past, we've done shows about young players who have been linked with the clubs and because with United, and because we sometimes get a little bit overconfident as fans about players signing for us and who we believe and don't believe. Sometimes we can position them slightly different. So I want to make sure that we're positioning this as a player who is very much sought after in Europe. He's a very young lad. He's an Argentinian. His name is Thiago Almada. Am I saying that right, Dan?
Yes, Ben, spot on, mate.
There we go. See, I knew it. I've just got this South American accent down to a T now. We're linked with so many players. But it's safe to say with Thiago Almada that he is one of those players, Dan, that is getting a bit of a reputation for himself. Already people using the term wonderkid. Could you give us a brief overview of what you know about the 19-year-old?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning to everyone there. Almada's been on the scene now for... It's coming on. This will be his third year as a pro. He got his debut for Vélez Sarsfield back in 2018. And right from the start, he's been marked out as someone a bit special, someone a bit different, very, very talented young guy who came on very strongly at Vélez under the watchful eye of Gabriel Heinze, who I'm sure all United fans remember very well. He's a kid, he grew up in Fuerte Apache, the same very kind of gritty, let's say, neighbourhood that Carlos Tevez grew up in. He's been with Vélez since he was very young, and now he's a fixture in their team. He's played all over the pitch for Vélez, and he just keeps getting better, keeps getting more effective. Obviously, the COVID pandemic came at a very inconvenient time for him, as it did obviously for all of us. But now he's back in form. He's playing regularly, and really, I think the sky's the limit for this kid.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there, obviously he plays for the club there. Is he still managing them, Gabriel Heinze? Is he still managing them?
No, he went off to Atlanta United, didn't he? Yeah.
Oh, did he? Is that where he is now? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, in terms of his influence with Thiago Almada, do you feel like he has progressed since, and do you feel like you've seen consistent progression from him? As you said, he has a tough upbringing, so he sounds like a lad who's very determined. He's got a bit of grit about him.
Yeah, I think what Heinze did for him, as he did for a lot of these very talented kids who have come through Vélez in the last few years, is that I think we all know Heinze, he's a tough guy. He's a disciplinarian. He doesn't take any nonsense, and sometimes that's just exactly what these guys need. Almada's talked several times about the influence that Heinze has had on him, just taking him aside in training and kind of possibly curbing a little bit his instincts to kind of break away and throw a few tricks, and making sure, look, the first thing you need to do is be a team player and contribute. It's no good, taking the ball to the corner flag and beating five guys if the final product isn't there. And I think that's probably more than anything what Heinze's helped Almada with, just being a lot more effective, a lot more direct on goal. And as I said before, he's a guy who's played all over the pitch for Vélez. He's played from centre midfield up to centre forward. He's played on both wings. But I think the position he's most happy in has actually come more recently under Heinze's replacement, Mauricio Pellegrino, where he's kind of established himself in attacking midfield, this link between midfield and attack. And that's where he's really shone in the last 6 months since football's come back.
Would you say now then that position is becoming more natural for him? Give us a little bit of insights around his attributes on what makes him and what he's very much becoming, isn't he? From what I've read and from what you've told me as well, he's very much starting to become an all-round player. His work ethic seems to be improving. He's starting to have great energy about it. Tell us a little bit about why he's thriving in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. When he first came onto the scene, he perhaps had a tendency, like a lot of teenagers, a lot of young kids, to drift out of games, and sometimes under Ainsi, Vélez's tactics didn't help him too much because Ainsi, as a coach, he's a guy who likes to move the ball quickly. You know, gets from one end of the pitch to the other rapidly, and really puts the onus on movement and keeping everything moving. And for a guy like Thiago, who's probably a little bit more static and he likes the ball to come to him, it was a little bit more difficult. And what you saw often in that era was that he'd drift out to the right, drift out to the left, come back, just always looking for the ball. And that meant that when Vélez needed him in the area, he wasn't there. He was out of position. And what's happened in these last few months is that he's picked up this kind of awareness that, look, if I'm going to be effective, if I'm going to make things happen, I need to be in or around the box. And that's why this position, finding himself at home, either in attacking midfield or occasionally on the right wing where he still occasionally pops up, that's been very important because he's not the hardest working guy in the world. He's not particularly fond of tracking back. He's not going to give you much in defence, but when he's got the ball at his feet, when he's in the final third, and when he has a chance on goal, when he has a clear path to shoot, he can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, and he's very much a player who does like to take a chance from what you've told me as well. I suppose we will get back into Almada in just a moment and talk more around his qualities and how potentially he will fit into some of the biggest sides in Europe and talk about also the clubs that are actually interested in him from what you know, Dan. But first of all, you mentioned there earlier on, obviously, Heinze used to be his manager before he moved on to Atalanta. Tell us a little bit about the level he's playing at the moment.
So the last 6 months, it's been very difficult in Argentine, South American football. The league got cancelled, so what we had was kind of an interim cup competition, and also the two continental South American competitions, the Libertadores and the Sudamericana, which is kind of the second tier of competition here. Vélez played in the Sudamericana. They went deep in the Sudamericana. They got up to the semi-finals where they lost out to fellow Argentines Lanús, and Almada was key in that. I think he scored 4 goals in 8 games to get them to the semis. And that meant that he didn't feature that much in the domestic competition because Vélez tended to save him for what they considered the big games, which were the Sudamericana. But what we saw of him from there was fantastic. A guy who was taking on very good teams. It's not quite the level of the Libertadores, but it's pretty good. It's continental competition, and he's a guy. If you could say one thing about him, he's just fearless. He doesn't shirk any challenges. He doesn't let big games kind of overwhelm him. He always just goes out there and wants to impress, wants to score goals, and that's great to see for such a young kid. I've really been impressed with him in these last few months.
Yeah, and in terms of you mentioned there, like him doing well in getting some cup runs and some time with the cup team. How involved is he still now at just 19 with that first team? Has he completely made that breakthrough yet? What are fellow pros saying about him, and what's his current manager saying about him?
No, they're very complimentary of him. As I say, it was a kind of strange situation for these last few months because Vélez, had to play week in, week out of 2-3 games a week. So what Pellegrino, his coach, did was make sure he was fit for the Sudamericana games, and that meant that possibly he didn't play that much at the weekend in the domestic games. But it's clear that in Vélez's, strongest side, Almada is definitely in there. He's the number 10. He's their playmaker. He makes things happen for them, and unless he leaves, he's gonna carry on doing that this year, I'm sure.
And what about with every young player? There's always ways that he can improve. We've mentioned now about his agility, his toughness, his grit. He's able to create chances, take chances. He's becoming more and more of an all-rounded player with the more games that he plays. He likes to move between, obviously, his attacking midfield role. He can play out wide too. And he's got a lot of admirers because he tends to, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, Dan, from what I've read, the coaches and the teams who seem to admire him the most are the ones who move the ball quickly. He seems to be able to be quite decisive on the ball as well. But what about areas that maybe he needs to improve his game if he was to come to the Premier League?
As I say, the work rate has to go up because he's a guy who likes to have the ball at his feet, but off the ball, he needs to work on that. He needs to get more involved. If you're playing in the Premier League, you need to track back, whether you're a left winger, right winger, or a centre forward. It's defending's an 11-man game, and he can't afford to just wander around and watch the game go by. And that'll probably be the primary thing that he needs to work on. And also, there are a few rough edges when he's on the ball. You can see that the raw technique is brilliant, but it's not completely polished. He'll occasionally, run down dead alleys or try to take on a defender and nothing will happen. So, working on his technique, just getting a bit, polishing out those rough edges and perhaps, picking the better decisions, not always just going straight charging for goal, but, taking the game back and looking for a teammate. That's going to help him a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Let me quickly, I'd like to do this in the middle of every show, Dan. I just want to quickly, before we move on, just give some shout out to the guys who are in here and they are commenting. Guys, if you're watching on any other platform, please come over to YouTube, youtube.com/all4united. Hello to Shashil, who's in the comments. Jamie Reese is about as well. Hello to Jacob as well. Thank you guys for getting involved. And I also believe Jeff as well is getting involved in the live chat. Guys, feel free to have conversations around our talking points or also talk amongst yourselves while listening or watching the show this afternoon. It's lunchtime. Let's have one great big jolly conversation. We can't go to the pub for our lunch break to have a chat with our mates. Let's all have a chat here, right? Dan, I just want to quickly see how highly you rate him, how highly Argentinian fans are talking about him. There's a lot of players really in general in South American football. There's a lot of wonderkids being spoken about at the moment, and loads of potentially big moves as well across Europe being linked with these players. But in Argentina specifically, there's a lot of excitement around Perez, McAllister, who's now obviously at Brighton, Palacios, Valenti, Moreno, just a few young Argentine players who are getting a lot of plaudits. Where does Thiago Almada come into that conversation? Is he really highly rated there? And to you, should he be making a top 5, a top 10 list of young Argentinian footballers to watch out for?
He'd definitely be in my top 5, if not right at the top, because as Argentine talent goes, he's definitely one of the best. He's one of the few guys, that of that age, playing regularly, playing a pivotal role in a team. And as I said before, I think the sky's the limit for Almada. He's a fantastic player. Probably helps him a little bit in an Argentine context that he's not playing for a Boca, for a River, where the pressure on these young kids the second they make their first team debut is so intense. They have the microscope on them. I mean, very similar, I imagine, to making your debut in United at 19 years old. Everyone's just on you from the first touch and thinking you're going to be the next, greatest player in the world. In Vélez, you fly under the radar a little bit. You probably don't get the same press you would at one of Argentina's giant clubs, but I think that's beneficial, to be honest, because he's a guy who's picked up a hell of a lot of first team action. He's scoring goals, he's setting up goals, he's really standing out, and he can do that without having 50 cameras in his face every time he leaves his house or every time he leaves training, which can only be good.
Yeah, no, 100%. And of course, he's playing for the Argentinian under-20s alongside Velez as well over there in the Primera Division. However you want to. Why is it's division? Like, why did I feel like I had to put an accent on there? No one listening is going to care whether my South American accent is there or not. Of course, he's seeing good output. He's performing well in the cup competitions as well, as you said there. And he's very much a player to watch. He seems to be one of those players as well, which like from day one, from the age he turned 16, was able to get on Football Manager or FIFA, that he's ended up being amongst the world-class players if you buy him for your team, which is why quite a lot of people have heard of Thiago Almada. It's great to hear that he's got the Gabriel Heinze connection as well. We sort of hit on it slightly, but I just want to hit on it a little bit more. Again, we spoke there about fellow pros rating him and speaking highly of him. Have you heard anything out of the Argentinian camp on when that first cap might come, or is there talk around that at the moment in South America?
It hasn't been mentioned, to be honest. Argentina right now have just started their World Cup qualifying campaign. Their first 4 matches came before Christmas, and then they'll reconvene that, I believe, in March. And then the Copa America will be on us, and that will continue. I get the feeling that the Argentina coach, Lionel Scaloni, has a decent idea of who he wants in his squad, and Almada is a little bit behind, because let's not forget that this is an intensely competitive position for Argentina. You've got guys like Messi, just in attack, Dybala, Lautaro Martinez, Sergio Aguero, Angel Di Maria, Lo Celso in Tottenham. Apologies. There's so much competition for places, so you think Almada is going to have to bide his time. He's definitely going to be considered. No one's going to be forgetting about him, but he'll have to be patient, at least until I think maybe Argentina have a few friendlies and they can afford to try out a few of these young guys. And in that case, I think that would be a very good time to see what he can do.
There's a lot of players knocking on the door at the moment, isn't there? I just want to quickly hit on his release clause. I've seen this in a couple of places, and there's a couple of figures that keep being pushed around: 23 million or 25 million. Do you know at all if there is a release clause there for a club to so to speak benefit off of? Because 23 million doesn't sound like a lot of money at all for a player or for a club to take a punt on him.
Yeah, it's my understanding that that fee is there or thereabouts. It's roughly accurate. But if we're honest, Vélez, they've been hit very hard, like every single team here, by the events of the last 12 months. And if they get a bid, probably even worth half of that or a little bit more, they'd be very, very inclined to take it. 16 million euros in Argentine terms is a fortune. That's one of the fees I've seen mentioned for Almada in recent weeks. If they were offered that, it would be pretty much impossible to reject, even if it is below his release clause.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because this is starting to feel a little bit like the opportunistic Palistru transfer for United that happened, and it looks like a big club in Europe, and it will be a big club in Europe, will end up securing his services. I think potentially in the summer. Is that what you're hearing as well, Dan? Do you expect him to be leaving the Argentine league by the summer?
Yeah, absolutely. If someone comes along and puts that money up, Vélez will sell, and a lot, of course, will have to do with what happens in these next 6 months. We're just about to go into a new season here. It starts next week. Almada will be hugely important for Vélez, and if he shines again as he has, these last couple of years, these last 6 months, definitely a big club should be knocking on Vélez's door.
Yeah, and let's talk about those big clubs. I read an interview. I want to start with this one, and we spoke about his inspirations and so to speak managers. I read an interview where apparently he spoke very, very highly of his admiration for Bielsa, one of our biggest rivals. He said that he quite fancied a move to Leeds potentially. He's also there was big rumours with Arsenal going for him in the summer as well, before they went and got Partey and never had the money there. And of course, we spoke earlier on about teams that move the ball quickly, some of the biggest clubs in Europe. Seems that City are also extremely interested in keeping tabs on this lad. And of course, as ever, when a transfer window happens, United get linked with every player, and it seems that United have scouted him, but how solid that interest is, we don't know. But when it comes down to these Premier League clubs, Dan, which club do you think would suit him the best? And don't feel like you have to say United because you're on a United-based podcast. I want your honest opinion, because I think hearing about how you think he would settle at a club like City, Arsenal, or Leeds, and then United, I think that really shows sort of where he's at as a player at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a difficult one to gauge. You have to take a lot of things into consideration. Perhaps if you're looking at a club like Leeds, if that transfer went through, he'd have maybe a clearer path to the first team, where there wouldn't be the same competition for places as you get with clubs, like City and United, who have players to spare, very deep squads, which, it's just that bit harder to make an impression. And of course, as with many Argentine players, the Bielsa factor is big, because there's so much admiration for this guy, what he's done, not just at Leeds, but throughout his career. From the very first days he was here in Argentina with Newell's. So that will weigh heavy. But I think no matter where he goes, he's going to fit in. It's going to depend a lot on how each team plays, because you're going to have to accommodate in your starting lineup a guy who just plays as this nexus between the midfield and the attack. And he might not contribute too much in the engine room. He might not move around too much, but then again, we've seen him on the wings, and it's a position he can play. I just think it'd be a shame if he did move to United, say, or a Man City and Arsenal, and he was trying, and they tried to convert him into something that he's not, kind of just a winger who's going to do the shift up and down the flank. I think he's not suited entirely for that role, and it's been something I've seen before in South Americans who have gone to the Premier League or have gone to Europe. I remember very famously with Juan Ramon Riquelme, when he moved to Barcelona, and Van Gaal tried to turn him into a right winger, and it was a total fiasco. There's always kind of, I think, this tendency in Europe to kind of make players more functional, try and make them fit into this system, and kind of blunt the creative edges they might have, and it'll be a shame to see that with Almada, because the talent is there, and I think if you let him do what he can do, he can turn into a very, very fine player indeed.
Nothing frustrates me more when a team or a manager tries to shoehorn in an out-and-out number 10 or creative player on the wing. It does my head in. We saw it for about 2 seasons with Juan Mata at United, just because we weren't playing with an out-and-out number 10 at the time. To accommodate him, we put him out on the left or right-hand side, and it would just trigger me, because it'd be like, you've got this guy who thrives in a certain position, and given consistent games, he could make that position his own. And sort of similar situation we've maybe seen with Ozil recently. I mean, I know there's a lot of club politics around it, but for a fact, if Arsenal managed to get Ozil in their first team at number 10 and gave him 7 or 8 consistent games, you'd end up seeing a top quality player again. And it just frustrates me. You're right. There's a certain mentality in Europe, like you said, that for some reason, clubs try to shoehorn creative players into wide positions. There's just so much more work for players like that to do when they're pushed out wide. I never get it. No,
exactly. Very hard. You can understand the need to accommodate these players if you're not working in their system, but it's always a bit of a shame, as you said.
You never get the most out of it. It's the same at the moment. We're having the same discussion at the moment, Dan, about Greenwood. I think if United's number 9s as such can't start going on a run of games scoring goals as number 9s, I think we should start playing Greenwood there, because he's always shown that he has the potential and will go on to be United's first choice number 9, first choice striker. Although he's got some developing to do, I don't necessarily feel like developing players by pushing them out of position is the right way to go. Although game time is important, I think that the job of a winger is very different to a job of a striker. And if you start to blur those lines, if Greenwood goes inside to a number 9 and starts in doing the job of a winger, you completely lose your balance as a front line. And as a player, you completely lose a big chunk of your development. So, yeah, it's a similar conversation that we're having at the moment at United with Greenwood. But moving back to Thiago Almada, of course, the Premier League isn't the only option. There are big clubs around Europe looking at him. So I'm just wondering if off the top of your head, you could maybe name one club that you think, or a league even, that you think he would suit and why.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard recently as well, Barcelona being linked to him, inevitably, I think, because it's Barcelona and they're always in the conversation for these kind of kids. Man, seeing him somewhere like Italy and Serie A, what we've seen in recent years is that it's kind of a very welcoming league for young South Americans, young Argentines. They feel at home there. They feel at home with the tempo of the football, the culture, perhaps a little bit more than England, if not the language. So, if you're looking down the line someone like Inter or Milan, even that would be a very interesting switch for me, because they're teams that are doing well. They're in form, and if they added, this creative presence into their team, it could make for interesting watching for me.
Yeah, 100%. And from everything you've told us, Dan, he's a very exciting player. Just to recap then slightly, as I know people would tune in and tune out, obviously at different stages of the show. Just to recap slightly, Thiago Almada, the sky, as you said, is the limit. Why is the sky the limit for this kid? And why are you so excited about him?
Because he's got the talent. He's got the determination to succeed. He's got the attitude he needs, to take players on, to go for goal. He's got no fear. As I said, he's not the finished article. He needs to keep working. He needs to keep playing games and polishing those rough edges. But everything's in the right place. He's not going to back away from any challenges. He's not going to, shy away from reaching his potential. And I don't see any reason why he can't make it.
Perfect. Dan, this was a fantastic player profile. Thank you so much for giving us the lowdown on Thiago Almada. And just quickly for you, if he did sign for United, how would you rate that signing for us as a club? Obviously, we've invested in young talent a heck of a lot more recently. We've got some great players coming through in our under-23s and players that look like they're going to be absolute stars. If we did end up getting the signature of Thiago Almada, how much of a good signing is that for Manchester United?
I think it'd be a great signing. As I say, you'd have to be patient. Even if you're putting 16, 20 million in for this player, you can't expect him to go straight into the first team, take the number 10 shirt or what have you, and start lighting up the Premier League. There's going to be an adaptation period, as with all these kids. But just objectively, I think it would be a fine signing for United or for any team that are lucky enough to get a signature.
Always fantastic over insight, Dan. Thank you so much for that. Dan Edwards Goal on Twitter. Go and check out Dan. He puts up some fantastic pieces about South American football and especially about South American wonder kids. It's where I first learned really about Pelistri and also Thiago Almada. Again, as it is always with United, rumour mill's also always massive. This show isn't to say, we're going to sign an absolute wonder kid here. This show is to tell you why the biggest clubs in Europe are after Thiago Almada and exactly what United would be getting if potentially we were to go in for him. So it's a nice little show to learn more about different footballers that potentially you haven't heard of before and how potentially they could make an impact on this United team. We'll try and do some more as and when United are linked with other players. As ever, Dan, thank you so much. Guys, subscribe youtube.com/All for United and search All for United Daily on your podcast platform to listen back to any of the week's shows. I'll be back on Monday. Monday is going to be a very, very special show and one that I'd love all of your company for. We're going to be reflecting on the Munich air disaster with the Manchester Munich Memorial Foundation. author Tom Clare and author Roy Kavanagh, MBE. So please join us for that as we reflect on a tragic moment of this football club. And if you can do, please go and check out John Gubber's video that he's put up today on MUFC The Religion with Patrick, who's going to be on the show with me on Monday. And make sure you do watch the stream of Munich 58, of the memorial service, which is very much, so to speak, stripped back this year, as no one can get out to Munich to obviously put on a memorial like they normally would. So please check out MUTV because it's being streamed for free. That's all for me. Take care, guys. Enjoy your Friday. And of course, as ever, Saturday over on our YouTube channel, get all the pre-match and post-match reaction as Manchester United take on Everton. Bye, guys.